Welcome to another episode of What's Happening, Education and COVID-19. And today I am joined by a special guest for a couple different reasons. One, because Jarrod is an educator in Australia, and I want to kind of know a little bit more about what's happening in their country in terms of how they're handling it. But also, Jarrod is the only person that I know who actually has been tested positive for COVID-19, and he's in the midst of this, hopefully towards the tail end of it. But Jarrod, do you want to introduce yourself first of all, and then we'll just get started?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm Jarrod Lamshed. I'm a senior leader at a local primary school here in Adelaide. I guess a bit of the backstory that's interesting is that I went away nearly 5 weeks ago now, I guess, to Europe. Came back 2 and a bit weeks ago and tested positive for good old COVID-19. So I've then been in isolation ever since. So yeah, it's been an interesting time.
So when you, do you have like any sense of here's probably where I got it from, or is it just like, could have been a million different things, or?
Could have been a million different things. When I left, the world was still relatively normal. This was something that was happening in China, and all of our government travel warnings were around just take the usual care, don't go to China, and maybe rethink Italy if that's on your list, which it wasn't. So it just went about normal business. When I had the test, I asked the doctor about likely dates, and could have been anywhere from the 6th of March, really. So probably in London somewhere, I think.
So you got back to Adelaide on what date?
I got back on the, that's a good question, the 16th or 17th. It was a Thursday night of March, and then woke up the Friday morning feeling just a little tickle in my throat, little cough, and like the start of a bit of tightness, start of a sore throat. Thinking not really a big surprise. I've been on planes and recycled air and things like that, and a little bit susceptible to sore throats anyway. And after a couple of days, it was getting a bit worse, and I thought, given the state of the world, I'll go and line up for the test, and did that. There's a clinic at the local hospital here that were testing just for people that have returned from overseas. Still thinking it was just a bit of man flu or something like that, and but yeah, then got the results the next day.
And like for you, sort of, what was the peak of the in terms of how the impact on you, like how sick were you, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah. It really is interesting. I guess that's why I've been sharing through my social media a little bit about what it's been like for me, because it's not really like the drastic cases you see in the news for me and for most people. I think it's felt a lot like a flu and a cold combined, sore throat, which did get quite sore, a cough, which developed. You can still hear it a little bit in my voice, that developed into my chest, but then quickly has become a tickle in my throat again, and just feeling fairly flat. I had lots of like a bit of achiness like the flu. Had the sweats and chills. It's very attractive to talk about, I know. But that passed fairly quickly. No fevers or high temperatures for me at all. Been checking every day, and yeah, that's really about it. Just a general feeling of being unwell, and there's sort of a heaviness to it. So it sort of feels like you're being pushed down on and sideways and from the front and back. It's a bit of an unusual feeling.
Well, and this is I think where we're all curious about, because the range of how people, everything from being completely asymptomatic to, of course, people dying, and then it seems like everything in between. So I think we're all just sort of, even the medical community is trying to figure out exactly what does this do. So that's, I guess everybody's going to have their own story. And so I was just curious to know. Now you're in about what day? What did you sort of figure you were, day 14 or 15 or something like that?
Yeah, this is about day 16 now for me, since the first symptoms. about day 13 or 14 since diagnosis. Yep.
Okay. And so, and I know you said something about you got to be tested. You have to have 3 negative tests before you're sort of considered
Yeah,
recovered.
2. So I had one
Okay.
test at day 10 after diagnosis, so last Wednesday, and that came back positive still, which I wasn't overly surprised at because I still had quite a sore throat and quite a bad cough at that stage. At the time, they told me that then I'd be tested every second day until I'm clear twice. But that's changed a bit. I guess they're being a bit more cautious with the amount of tests available, which makes sense. And so they're waiting until I've had no symptoms for 3 days. Today is the first day with no sore throat, so I'm just waiting for this last little bit of cough to go away. So I would think by the time I have 2 good tests clear and the symptoms finally disappear, I'll be stuck in here for another week at least, I think.
So are they sliding the food under the door? Or do they actually open it, or how do you
Yeah,
actually,
pretty
how do they
much.
actually?
You can maybe see behind me here, you can see the fridges come out of the garage,
Okay.
and
Oh yeah.
rustled up a spare microwave and an electric fry pan. So I've got I've got some basics in here to do some of my own stuff, but a lot of the time I'm having some meals kindly delivered from through the wall to the front door. So there's it's left on the doorstep, and everyone takes their 5 meters back, and we're just being really extra cautious. And
Yeah.
I guess we had the warning that I would have to isolate. I knew I was going to have to isolate when I came back. So we went with a bit of an overabundance, which really wasn't an overabundance of caution in the end.
Yeah.
That, we did, my mum dropped my car at the airport with my son so that nobody had to drive me home, and so I could drive myself home. And all of the supplies and things were here. I waved to the family across the yard, no physical contact. So I haven't seen anybody for about nearly 5 weeks, really, since I left home. It's all a
Wow.
bit strange.
Yeah.
We've had a couple of conversations across between the front and the backyard through the fence with many meters apart, and thank goodness for technology.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be again, a welcome day when you can open up the door and hug your family again and connect back with them. So.
Yeah, and it's a bit of even that is the transition to that is going to be interesting, because all of this area of the house we feel like we just about need to set on
Right.
fire and rebuild. We're just got to work out how we clean and make sure that even though I'm no longer infected, that I'm not sitting on the couch and carting
Right.
still live germs through to the other part of the house, or trying to work out what that looks like too. So once I get my first negative test back, we'll look into that a little more deeply and work out how to transition out of this space at some point.
Well, again, feel for your situation, but also grateful the fact that you're not experiencing the depth of this virus that
Yeah,
many
me
else
too.
are. So tell me, before I want to talk about the education side of it, but also just curious around, Adelaide, South Australia, Australia in general, in terms of life. Again, not that it's secondhand a little bit from you, obviously, because you're isolated, but like just in sort of the country itself and the area in terms of how they're dealing with it and what life is like for people there.
Yeah, I think things are slowly shutting down. I think really essential services is always a bit of an interesting category, because there seems to be a bit of differing opinion over what's essential and what's not. But most things that have closed down for a bit. From what I'm hearing, the local shopping centre is a bit of a ghost town. Apart from the supermarkets, there's still a shortage on toilet paper and cleaning products, like everywhere now. Schools are still open here, but not, attendance is right down. So I had a Google meeting with students in my classroom that I teach in on a Friday last week, and there were only 4 students there out of 30 that are enrolled. So most are at home, accessing their learning from home at the moment. So
And okay, so that's interesting. Well, a couple things. First of all, again, unlike here in North America where school is, on the tail end of the year, you're kind of right in the middle or almost at the start because
Right.
would have
Yeah.
started in January, right?
Yeah. Yeah. This is just the end of our first term. So I have 4. Yeah.
So you've got a little ways to go. So that's interesting that they haven't, like here pretty well across the board in North America, everybody is shut home. And so now the thought is, what does this remote uh, learning look like? So you're saying
Yeah.
that this has not been mandated. Is this something you expect will happen soon or not necessarily?
Not necessarily. The medical advice that the government are giving out at the moment is that schools can and should remain open. Clearly, not everybody agrees with that, but our directive is that schools are open. However, the latest from the department here is that they've put into place. This coming week would normally be our last week of school for the term before 2 week school holidays. So we've got a public holiday Friday for Easter, but they've put in the first 4 days as student-free days. So all students in South Australia, at least, are starting their holidays early, and that gives the rest of the week for teachers to look at planning around, expecting that still a good slab of students will be learning from home, we think, next term.
So for your specific class, what are you looking at in terms of that number? Is it like you said,
Yeah, well,
4 out of 30 or something that are there?
4. Yeah, there have been 4 in the last week, and I would assume that that's going to stay the same. I think that people have got a pretty good headset for staying at home when they can. Um, I think the discussion is this week, which unfortunately I'll be having remotely as well because I can't leave the house. Other teachers will be on site, but we'll be looking at what that looks like, and the message that's coming from the department and from all of us really is that this isn't the same as parents deciding to give up work and homeschool their kids. This is everybody, us included, parents included, in crisis mode. That there's that expectation that we want families to do the best they can, provide some structure around their kids learning with us, but also understand that they're also trying to manage their new life of working from home or not working from home, but their kids are home, or whatever that looks like for them too. So it's certainly going to be an interesting time ahead.
But is this, so again, I just want to be clear. Is this like double duty that I have these 4 or handful of kids that are in the building that I'm obligated to teach for the day and then also provide learning opportunities and experience for those 25
Yeah.
who have chosen to stay home?
So we are accepting anybody that comes to school, but the information that we've given out as a school has been that even that students that come to school will still be doing online, will be doing the online learning component as well.
So and that makes sense to me. And again, I just talked to a superintendent here in British Columbia, Canada, and I didn't realize that they are obligated to keep the school open for emergency service workers, so nurses and doctors and people
Yeah,
involved in that. And I think it's ages 5 to 12 or something like that. So if you're a high school,
yep,
you don't come, but if you're 8-year-old kid, your
sure.
mom's off to the hospital, they get to. So I'm assuming that these handful of kids are the kids that are just maybe the most vulnerable or in very unique situations where this is
I
all they
think so.
have.
And like I said, I think that everyone's in a bit of crisis mode at the moment, and we'll see what that looks like as it settles in and becomes the new normal, because everybody's in a different situation. I know we're choosing that my daughter is not going to school at the moment. She's working from home, so I think 1 dose of this in the household is plenty, and the school's set up for that, and that's fine. So, but I also know that as well as that, I still have to go to work once I've got the all clear. Schools are still open. I'm still expected to be on site at school, not working from home. So we have to just juggle what that looks like as a family, and that is going to be the case for everybody.
And you
The
talked a
30
little bit of,
students in my
sorry.
class, it's 30. The 30 students in my class, that's 30 families that are all having this same juggle that I'm having now, trying to work out what this looks like for them over the next however long this lasts.
And so this expectation, again, I'm really sort of, thinking about the length of this. And again, some of the advantages that we have here is that, especially in the US, they've
Yeah.
canceled their testing. So they've taken a lot of pressure off and, have not
Yep.
put much pressure at all on educators in terms of the expectations around what curriculum and things like that. I just feel like your situation might be different, but maybe not. What are you hearing from departments around, this is what we anticipate? I guess there's still plans in motion, but what are you sensing is what your expectations will be as a teacher in terms of new learning, in terms of, continuing this on?
Yeah, and again, I've been a bit detached, so I haven't really got the official word so much to talk about. But I would think that we'd be looking at, again, just seeing seeing where the balance lies between understanding that we want some structure, we want to maintain some learning, but we also understand that this is the new world we live in, and we just have to see what it looks like a bit. Our NAPLAN testing has been cancelled for the year. That's our standardised national
Yeah.
benchmark testing. So that's not happening. There are lots of big events that have been cancelled. I take the school choir, so the public schools music festival, which happens every year, has just officially in September has been cancelled. So yeah, there's sort of a ever-changing day by day thing for us at the moment, I think.
So what of all of the, and again, I understand, during your time, you haven't been as connected as probably might normally be, but just from, the interactions and what you've read and maybe what you've experienced, what messaging or strategies or anything that you've seen or you've experienced that really has helped and you think is really positive and helpful as far as encouraging teachers to persevere through this time?
Um, I think there's been lots of praise towards teachers who are doing a good job. Like teachers are always trying their best. I think people that are in the teaching profession genuinely want good things for kids, and I don't think that that's any different now. I think that on top of that, they're dealing with their own anxieties and their own family situations, and worrying about their own health issues as well, making sure their families are all sorted, but still trying to do a really good job for kids. I think that I know at our school we've done a lot of work around digital technologies and where that fits in learning anyway, but it's still a big leap to for a lot of people to be jumping into a fully online world as far as their teaching goes. Especially being that's my role at the school. In my leadership role, 4 days a week is supporting that digital learning, and this would be the time that I'm stuck at home and not on deck to support that. So I'm trying to support that as much as I can through other communications and from home, and that'll certainly pick up this week coming, while we've got the student free days and everyone has a chance to take a breath and think, okay, so what can we achieve? How are we going to do this? I think one of the positives that comes out of this is that messaging around that we've got to stop working individually and start working with our teams of teachers. I think that's going to be something that people are pushed into at the moment, because there's no point every year 5 class reinventing a year 5 program. We may as well, we need to get together and people take on lead roles in that, and there's a lot more collaboration in as far as coming up with good creative learning experiences for kids. Lots of discussions around, I think, what is important. When things do start falling off the list, we put out a full list of full days of teaching, and what are the important things? What are the things that can be let go if families don't have time? What are the things that are must do's? And then how we deal with all of that when we're eventually back at school too. How do we deal with the various gaps, the various levels of engagement that we've had over the next months or however long this lasts, and how do we pick that back up when we get back?
Well, and, it made me think too, like you talked about teamwork and things, and this is another sort of dynamic, is this is if you're a family and you've got 2 or 3 children at a school, you are now more aware than ever of the differences in levels of engagement in instructional ways that this is being approached. And so the need for us as a community to come together whether it's, as a school or larger entities, to be
Yep.
consistent, and make sure, again, everybody's going to do it a little differently. I don't think anybody's suggesting that this is cookie cutter, but
No.
pretty evident to a parent that finds out, and I've heard this before, where, even around communication, like one teacher's been very, in touch with the kids, letting them know what's going on and being really responsive, and the other teacher hasn't got a hold of them. And again, right early on in
Yep.
this game, the expectations have to be pretty low because individuals are just dealing with their own challenges. But
Yeah.
as this moves on, those gaps are going to become very, 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 very
Yeah,
evident,
I
for
think
sure.
so too. And I wonder myself just how long before a bit of complacency sits in. And already in South Australia, I know our testing and our success has been a lot higher here than in a lot of parts of the world. And you can see that curve starting to flatten off. And how long before people relax a bit and become a bit more complacent with the whole thing, and we start seeing more kids coming back to school, and what that looks like, and when's that tipping point of when we stop the online and start the back to whatever normal looks like. And I think it's going to be one of those things where whatever plan we put in motion has to be pretty flexible, because it's going to change
So when you think
regularly.
about, and again, 2 months from now, 4 or 5 months from now, after we've experienced this, do you have sort of any sense of um, silver lining or something that says, gee, maybe this will help us be better at this moving forward? Is there any thoughts around that? Again, with your back, especially with your thinking through the technology lens of it too.
Absolutely. I think like I said before, around that, I hope that it will become a little bit more habit that we work better in our teams of teachers, and that we are communicating, and more minds on one thing is a good thing. So I hope that becomes a bit of a habit and continues to happen. That happens well anyway, but I think it might just solidify that way of thinking. Yeah, obviously from a technology point of view, people are now going to be forced into this space of, what are the digital spaces that have been helpful here, and what place do they have in our future. A lot of our classes already are using Google Classrooms. We're part of a trial with the education department using Google through a department domain at the moment, which has not been a thing that has happened before because of the sort of offshore data storage and fears around that. So as far as our school goes, we're quite well set up to just lean into those tools anyway. But it will certainly help, again, to solidify their place for a lot of teachers that have put it on the back burner list. It can't be on the back burner anymore. So
Right.
I think some good will come from that. The price is pretty heavy with a pandemic to get to that point. But, if we're looking for silver linings in there somewhere, then I guess some of those things that have been on the back burner will come forward and find an authentic place for them, rather than, I want to try this tool because I saw it on Pinterest or I saw it on Twitter or whatever, that they'll find the things that have real purpose and real benefit, and sort of get rid of some of the clutter.
Absolutely. So I also know, when's the last time you had a chance to really test out your pipes, do a little singing?
Not for a while. It's a bit rusty at the moment. The throat's tightened it up. I've sort of been doing a little bit of music just for my own mental health, so I don't go too stir crazy around here. But yeah, it's just a little hobby.
Well, that's great. I mean, I enjoy. I think it's a part of me, and I look back to some projects I've done in the past that have just sort of been making yourselves vulnerable, and you've got a great voice, so you don't have to. Obviously, this is not just about well, let me try something, because I've shared my playing guitar and a few other things, which was nothing to your level, but I do appreciate the fact that you've shared that, and I know you're probably looking forward to being able to exercise
I
them in
think
a way that you haven't before
Yeah.
for a
I
while.
think for me too, and you were part of the influence behind that, I guess. I remember really looking in a lot of depth at your thoughts and ideas around joy and the lack of joy in teaching and in schools. And at the moment, that's a real problem, because a lot of the things that bring joy, like the choir festival that I talked about, and other programs like school sports and those sorts of things that really sparks joy for kids, and some of those experiences that we can't recreate when kids aren't physically in the classroom, they're going to be gone. So we've got to look for ways that and model that, I guess, for ourselves, that we've got to find those little bits of joy and remind people that they're there. The singing came from having some problems with my voice, and my speech pathologist was heavily involved in singing and suggested that was a good way to exercise the way I use my voice properly. So I picked it back up from there. So that sort of has led to that, and I've just tried to keep that up from, like I said, my own sanity, something different that's not school related, and not not something I have to do, but something I enjoy doing, and just for a bit of fun.
Well, and it also, to me, it's those moments, it's those things that connect us, right? I mean, yeah, we can all talk about education and teaching, but even, not just for, you and I who live, thousands of miles apart, but also for your students and your families who at this time, that connection is going to be even more. So that's the other thing that I'm hoping comes out of this, is that the relationships, you talked about the relationships maybe with the staff, but I'm even thinking within a community says that, hey, we're in this together, and getting to know people, their interests, their talents and their skills that maybe people weren't paying attention to more, can help, bring joy and bring us together as a community. So
I think so. And we have to find those ways. And I hope that, during this, I've seen a lot of those, the social distancing, choir rehearsals and things like that people have been sharing, which are fantastic. People are creative and on the ball, and those things take a lot of time and effort, but they spark that joy. I sound like, what's her name? The cleaning up lady. Don't know. Marie Kondo, sparking joy. I think that's
right.
where that came from.
That's right. Yeah.
But finding that joy in your day still, and finding ways to create that and being creative around that, and not forgetting that in the panic, I guess, that is naturally coming with the situation that we're in.
Well, and just again, want to thank you for sharing, and thank you. And again, the only person I know that has it, so that's why I was kind of curious just to find out your story. And I do appreciate the fact that you have continued to share your joy and share your story, so that people can connect and relate to it. And I know it's going to be helpful for you and your family and your school moving forward. So thanks for sharing.
No worries. I just think that, this is different for everybody. My story is not everybody's story, but from what my doctors are saying, that most people that haven't got an underlying health issue or aren't over 70 are going to have a similar story to this, that it feels pretty yuck, but it's not going to do me in, that you'll be out of action for a while and you'll feel pretty miserable, but this too will pass, sort of thing. So, and I just hope that sort of quells the fear a little bit for some people, that it's not a death sentence for everybody that gets it. I understand that it is for some people, but but just to try and keep a bit of a balance around it, and just accept, look, this is the world we're in, unfortunately, at the moment, and we just got to do what they're asking us to do. We've got to stay home when we can stay home, but if worse comes and you or someone that does get this thing, then one step forward. Don't jump straight to the end.
That dealing with fear, and again, as educators and leaders in community, I guess we have to continue to share that that idea, right? Like, be smart, but also fear is not going to help us.
I know, and it's easy for me to say because I've been in it now, and I had a bit of time. I think I just assumed that I was going to be susceptible to this, because I was going to be between when it really got crazy and when I was going to get home. I was in 5 airports and on 4 different planes, and if I didn't already pick it up on the London Underground, then there was a fair chance that I would pick it up somewhere along the way anyway. And as it is,
Right.
I had it before I came home. But yeah, it is what it is.
All right. Well, thanks, Jarrod. Have a lovely rest of your day. And
Thank you very
again, wish you
much.
well. Hope you get better soon, and look forward to you singing and back in the classroom and supporting
Yeah,
everybody.
just looking forward to some fresh air and a haircut at this stage. It'll be yeah, a good thing.
Well, looking
Try
looking
not
good
to
for
resort
some.
to the do-it-yourself.
All right.
Yeah,
Well,
no
thanks
worries.
again.
All right.